I used to have this joke about the military, and I go, I wake up every day and I hope we don't go to war, because if we had to have a draft, we're done. I go, it's like, all right, man, tomorrow we march. And I get down behind the stool. It's like, is that ragweed out there? Can we delay the battle till April? Because my allergies are really flaring up. And it's like, I haven't seen the enemy, but they've tweeted me some very hurtful things. I don't know anything about tools or manual labor. And I said, I used to have a joke in my show for the longest time. I go, my car was smoking one time, and my dad goes, let me check the engine. And I popped the trunk. The engine's not in the trunk, but yeah. And then I go, my dad goes, I can fix this. Go get me the Phillips. And I said, and I came back with the neighbors. I go, how are they going to help us? What are they, right? So, but based on what we've already talked about on this podcast, that comes from a real place of pain, right?
Yeah.
I have a sincere insecurity about not knowing how to do stuff. If me and you we're grilling out together, like, let's go start the grill. It's funny, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to check the propane or turn on the thing. I don't. If somebody was like, hey, go check the engine or the car, or put in some fluid, I just don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And I've never learned, and it's a legitimate insecurity.
Really?
But I have a joke in my show. I say my girlfriend, she brought me her car, and she's like, hey, can you fix this? And there was a tire. The light on the dash was a tire with a lightning bolt in it. And I was like, I don't think that tire is getting electricity. And that joke helps me feel better.
Yeah.
Because everybody laughs at it. And it's all silly now. I go, And that's what comedy is. That's a real insecurity, or me at times not being poor or not being able to attract women, right? And you make a joke of it. Everybody laughs, and you're like, okay, I'm right? And then it absolves itself. Now that insecurity still does exist, but that certainly helps me with it.
Yeah. So
if you asked me, hey, let's go out into the garage and we're going to look at I don't know what's going, I don't know cars. I like to drive them, but I don't know anything about them. And so if I go to the mechanic and he's like, oh, it's going to be $300 for this, $400 for this. I made a joke in my show about how the guy came over to paint my house, to paint the 3 interior rooms. And I was like, legitimately, is this $300 or $30,000? I don't know. I just don't know. Like, if he was like, hey, it's going to be 16 grand for this, I'd be like, I might be like, that seems like a lot, but I would be like, all right. And that's a real insecurity, but I make light of it, and I feel better.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people, by the way. If you're at your office and your boss comes in and with this HR thing, and you're like, you sit there and you go, you want to have your job, right? So you go, okay. And then you and the guy in the cubicle, you go, this, right? It's a coping mechanism, but for real pain, though.
Yeah.
And that's what any great comedian, that's what he's doing.
Interesting.
That's what he's doing for sure. I sat at a show with Tim Hawkins, who's a comedian, a buddy of mine. I was at his show, and he's making a joke about a CPAP machine, wearing a CPAP machine. I've told the story before about how it's not romantic. And you go, you ever been in your wife with the CPAP machine? He's like, maybe. He's like, I look like Darth Vader trying to initiate sex or whatever the joke is. And I was kind of side stage, and I looked out in the crowd, and there was an older couple, and they were, undone laughing at this joke. Just undone. Now, why?
They could relate to it.
Yes, dude. And it was a real source of either blocking intimacy in the bedroom or uncomfortability or insecurity for him to have to wear it because he snores. And this joke, I witnessed it. What this joke did for them freed them. Because he's embarrassed by it. That you got to sleep apnea. You got to wear this thing. And the wife is like, wow, this is like, it's uncomfortable. But it's human. It's life. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know how to, it's a barrier to, and he made this joke. And they were crying, dude. And I go, God, what you've just done for that couple, you cannot repay.
Do you see that a lot up
yes,
there?
All day.
You got anything that's hit you the hardest that really is just ingrained in you?
Oh man, there's so many that my jokes.
Yeah, you.
Oh, I mean,
the impact that you've made.
I used to have this joke about the people were like about the military, and I go, I wake up every day and I hope we don't go to war because, like, if we had to have a draft. I go, you realize Civil War, Revolutionary, is 18 to 25-year-old men. If we had to do that today, we're done. I go, it's like, I mean, like, you ever been shot? No, I've been triggered. It's like you're like, oh, God. And everybody's dying. And they were like, all right, man, tomorrow we march. And I get down behind the stool. It's like, is that ragweed out there? Can we delay the battle till April because my allergies are really flaring up? And it's like, I haven't seen the enemy, but they've tweeted me some very hurtful things. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's so funny because not probably related to military, but they've looked around at 18 to 25-year-old men.
Mm-hmm. That's what you see.
Yeah, and it's no knock on the military. It's just like a guy that's in his 60s looks at a kid and he goes, and that has been happening throughout the course of human history for forever. I'm sure the generation before you thought you were weak. You know what I'm saying? That's probably been going on for forever. But you go, gosh, that's so therapeutic for me to hear because I've thought that in my head and I've never verbalized it like that. So that's the whole hour of the show.
Yeah.
And you go, have you ever been to McDonald's like late at night and they make you pull up into that parking spot of shame? You know, it's like not like we were not ready for what you were about to do here. Like you got to pull up and you're like, it's not embarrassing to be there, but like when Christ returns, you probably don't want to be there. It's just like the idea. It's like, it is a shameful experience. And that trash can at the McDonald's comes up and comes over. Because you don't even want to get out of your car. They don't want people to see you. Just like get rid of the evidence. Because it's like, it is shame. It's a shameful experience. You're like, gosh, you don't want people. It's not your proudest moment.
Yeah.
And you verbalize that in a way that lifts the shame, or lifts the societal burden of that. And I see a lot of comics that they are going through so much turmoil in their own personal life that you go into their comedy show and it's their therapy session. And I tell all the comics, younger comics, if you're going to be great, you have to go into that comedy club or theater arena and lift the burden for them. You have to lift the burden for them. Those military tours that we've done, like you have to go in with humor and lift the burden. I've gone to comedy shows where I feel heavier leaving because the comic is depressed and broken up with his girlfriend, or maybe even racist in a little bit, or they're preaching at you, or they have some kind of agenda and they're just like, and you go, versus, oh my gosh, dude, I can't, that's such a, I mean, there's so many transcendent comedy bits. When comedy's done well, you'll never forget it. It speaks to you so much.
When did you start? What age were you when you started?
25.
25 years old.
Yeah.
What got you into it? I mean, we talked
So
about
I
the
went
videos.
to, well, he's big in the news now, but I was at a house party in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was walking to the bathroom, and there was these two girls in the living room watching the Pimp Chronicles by Katt Williams. And he was wearing this green suit, and I looked over there, and I was I go, what is this? I mean, he's so much control over that crowd and so much. He was preaching. He was saying truths, but in a way that was so digestible and so funny. I stood there. I didn't even sit down because I was like, I didn't know them. And I go, this is the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. This is the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was 20. I was in my 20s. I had to have been in my 20s. And then I started writing jokes. That's where the green, yellow, red came in, probably right then.
No kidding.
I had a piece of paper. I didn't have cell phones couldn't type notes in them, and you could text with them and call, but I just started writing down things that I thought were funny. Just things that I thought were funny, they weren't even punchlines. They were just like, oh, that's weird. Or like, what? Just inconsistencies that I saw in life. Like the first joke you'd ever come to is like, how come if you watch a commercial for a prescription, the side effects seem worse than what they're curing, right? So be like, you cure this headache, but you have risk of pneumonia, loss of limbs, heart attack, death. And you're like, death? But I didn't know, I'm not a professional comedian at the time, so I didn't know. I just go, huh? And I just wrote that.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.